Right, well, hello everyone. I'm Adrian Warnock, and I'm here with my new best friend. Well, not quite. I've never actually met you face to face. Until I met you, Rich, I'm not going to call you my best friend, but certainly my best current online friend, let's put it that way. Thank you for joining us today, Rich.
Oh, my pleasure.
So today's subject, we're not going to, we can wang on, to use a phrase, you and I think that's one thing I've noticed about both of us, and perhaps I'm worse than you, I don't know, but our videos in the past have been quite long, but we're going to try and make this one a nice, short, focused one. And really what I wanted to talk about today was working from home, because I noticed that you're in your home office and I'm in my home office.
Yeah.
And I had a whole decade where I worked from home exclusively, apart from traveling for work. I know a lot of people have never worked from home before, and they're suddenly being told in some cases by their employers, you're not welcome here. And it might be because they're vulnerable, or it might just be because the employers in general are saying, right, coronavirus, out. Now, how long that will last, some people might be asked now to work from home for like 13 weeks. And then, of course, you've got people being asked to isolate themselves for health reasons, perhaps because they've been exposed to the coronavirus or they've got the sniffles that they would normally push through and go to work. So for people who are used to working in offices, I thought maybe it might be useful for the two of us to sort of come up with a few tips and thoughts for people about how not to go stir crazy. I mean, I don't know about you. I remember when I first had to work from home, having been in an office, it was a huge adjustment. Would you say the same for you?
Well, I guess my sort of situation might be slightly different in the sense that the ministry that I'm involved in involves a lot of silence and meditation. However, I think our abilities to work from home may vary depending on your personality as well. So I think it's really important that we, as the weeks go on, and we do have to self-isolate, that we maintain, good contact with church friends and family members, and that we don't self-isolate in a way that is unhelpful. So I think
Yeah.
we need to be very much aware of that, and we do need those relationships and friendships around us to keep us going. So we need to be very much aware of that during this period,
Yeah.
which is quite unprecedented. I don't think any of us have experienced anything quite like it as a nation before.
Yeah, no, I agree. So here we go then. Tip number one. It's not good for a man or woman to be alone. So you have to have relationships. Now, whether that's with your fellow people that you're holed up with at home, I mean, I'm a bit aware that, if there's tension in those family relationships, this could be a difficult time if you're suddenly at home. And so you do need space. I mean, we all have to have a balance between space and togetherness. So, I think sometimes if you're suddenly thrown together, there are many marriages, for example, that partly work because the two of you go out to work and aren't together all the time. I remember for me, when I was first working from home, it was a strange thing because I would be in the house and my wife at that time was looking after the kids. And by the way, looking after the kids whilst you're trying to work doesn't always work very well. I think some of us might remember the BBC reporter who was working from home a little while ago and his kid came in, do you remember? And the wife tried to sort of grab him. So there's all of that. But the relationships are really important. And so practically maintaining relationships. One thing I would say is what we're doing now, and let's hope the broadband network can cope with it, but video conferencing, although it can feel strange to someone who's never done it before, I would argue it is very much more beneficial than simply a phone call. Would you agree with that, Rich? Can you explain a bit?
I would agree with that. I think it's a very quick and easy way to connect with other like-minded people. And if we can get over the sort of camera shy impact that it has for some people, we can really begin to benefit from the blessing of connecting with other people that we might not otherwise have conversations with. But we have to be intentional about it and look for those connections and seek to build bridges and maybe new relationships that might come unexpectedly along our way.
Yeah. So just as from a practical point of view, Many of us have a smartphone, okay? And if you have a smartphone, you can do video conferencing with your smartphone. You might be like, oh, how do I do that? Well, if it's an iPhone, there's something called FaceTime, but that only works with other people who have iPhones. So there's an app called WhatsApp, and actually Facebook has a similar thing. And with WhatsApp, if you've both got WhatsApp, doesn't matter what type of phone you've got, you can do a video conferencing together. Skype is another one. But I find WhatsApp quite useful. And it's very easy to think, oh, I'll just talk on the phone. And there's a place for that. But I know for me, for example, when I was in hospital and my father was also in hospital, he was unwell as well at the same time, we would video conference to each other's hospital beds because we wanted to be able to spend time together. And there was much more of a connection because you can see someone's facial expressions. You can see their love for you. You can see, you know, much more, take up the cues that we use. And so, you know, there's a reason why we like meeting people face to face. And I know that has sort of begun to die a death a little bit with things like social media and texting. A lot of kids prefer to text than they do to talk on the phone. And even when you meet up, sometimes you'll see people on their phones, not actually connecting, not giving people eye contact. There's something about the eyes, eye to eye, looking into my eyes, that is really important for making those connections and for us feeling, you know, not alone. Because I think it can be very, very lonely if you feel alone, either because you're sick or just because you're working from home and you haven't got those conversations over the coffee cups, those informal conversations, which I think sometimes when you're working in an office, you think of those as wastes of time. But actually, I believe what you're doing is building up relational capital. And so if you know somebody in those moments, you know, when you've got to do some work together, when there's maybe a difficult conversation to have, you've got relational capital together that makes it easier to deal with. So yeah, I would strongly recommend, you know, hit that video call button sometimes with your friends, even your work colleagues, and certainly your family members. I noticed, for example, recently as well, and this is only necessary if someone doesn't have a smartphone, Facebook have been issuing these things called portals. They're probably all sold out now, I would imagine, where it's literally like a picture frame and it sticks on your shelf and you can interact with perhaps an older family member who you are now worried about going to see because you might give them the infection. And then you can actually talk to them through that. So they don't even need the phone in that instance. So that's another tool that could be useful. But do you agree that eye-to-eye, face-to-face contact is crucial to being human, really?
It is. I mean, a lot's been said about, you know, how we communicate so much more than just through, you know, audible voice. And it's just so important for us. It's almost like something happens when people have one another's company and connect conversationally with one another. And loneliness is a terrible thing. And it's so easy for us to retreat into a place that is not beneficial for our own mental health.
Yeah.
So we really need to be aware of that, and as much as we're able, make deliberate steps to find the friendships, the company that we need as human beings.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I suppose that, you know, perhaps if we were to put that into a sort of tip, it's about getting the balance between me time and together time, even in that context. So you need your own space if it's all possible. And that can be difficult if you're living in a small flat with people or small house. But, you know, maybe one of you needs to stay in the bedroom for a bit and one of you sit in the lounge for a bit, and one of you in the dining room, you know, and it you know, certainly for us at the moment, I mean, we've had a couple of days recently because one of our children had a mild viral illness, and fortunately it was you know, you're never more relieved than when you've got a snuffly nose at the moment, because typically that's not coronavirus. Although I understand that even if we have a snuffly nose but have a fever or a cough, we're supposed to still assume that it is and isolate ourselves for 7 days. So we've had a few days when we've had 7 people in the house. And so we don't necessarily all sit in the same room together. And of course, actually, that's a bit of a worry in terms of passing infection from one person to another, but also because we do need our own space. And so sometimes you have to book the room as well. Like I'm using the small office here, and one of my boys wants to record some music. And this is the room he needs. So as soon as I'm finished, I'm going to go and tell him, so the office is yours now, so he can sit in here and have some me time to do his own thing.
Yeah.
So having a quiet space, so that would be another thing I would say, especially for the working from home people. It's very, very important that you find a place in your house which is where you work, because you have that, if you're going out to work, you have that period where you walk to work or you're going on the train. And actually, I would argue that's the closest many people come to meditation, because they sit there quietly, not on their phone for once, thinking about the day, what's coming, maybe praying, maybe just mulling things over. And because they're underground or something, they can't go on the phone. And then the same on the way back. So you have that opportunity to sort of focus on what you need to do with work, and then to disconnect from work and then reconnect at home. Now, of course, that all goes out the window if you're working from home. And one of the big mistakes I made early on, I remember when I first started working from home, like, way more than 10 years ago now, I used to stay in bed. I didn't used to get dressed. I used to stay in my pajamas, and it can be tempting to do that. And I'm not saying it's wrong always wrong to do that, but you don't have the barrier then between work and rest. And if you work in your bed, when you then try and sleep that evening, guess what? You start thinking about your work. So it's very smart, I think, to get up, to have that shower, and it's tempting not to dress. Some people even say put your shoes on, maybe even put a flipping suit and tie on. If that's what you're used to when you work, I mean, you don't have to wear a suit and tie, but, wear what you're going to feel like. Says, oh, yes, now I'm in work mode, and try and get yourself sitting at a desk or at a table if it's no desk, or worst case scenario, on the sofa. I mean, that's, but it's all better than being in bed. So, and then of course, the challenge you have if you've got kids at home as well, or even a husband or wife, is the temptation is to think, oh, you're at home. So therefore, I can interrupt you whenever I need. Daddy, I need a drink. You know where the tap is. Go get it yourself, Don't think of me as being at home right now. I'm working. I remember that used to be really bad in the summer holidays, because the kids were like, they're off, they're having fun, and they might be staying up late at night, keeping you awake when you're trying to go to sleep so you can get up and work. 9 o'clock in the morning, the house is like, it's as though it's the middle of the night. Everyone else is asleep and you're trying to work, and you're like, you kept me awake last night and now I'm trying to stay awake to work. But that's better than when they do wake up, because then they suddenly come in and like, daddy, can you do this? Daddy, can you do that? Because I had very young children at the time. And I was like, go ask your mother. Do you know what I mean? So if at all possible, another tip I would give would be, don't try and do childcare whilst doing your job. Now, that's not always avoidable. And so you might have to sit them down and put them in front of a TV, let them watch a movie so that you can go and do a teleconference or something. And you might have to sort of have breaks during the day. And of course, that's the other thing. You need to be conscious about when you're working and when you're not. So, if you get up normally and you get on a train and you go to work and you start work at, say, 9 o'clock, and then at 5 o'clock or maybe 5:30, you leave and you go home, that's your working day. And most people then don't get home and turn the computer on and do emails and things at night, or some people do. But when you're working from home, the first thought you have is, great, I've saved all my commute time. I mean, that might be as much as 3 hours a day, because some people have an hour and a half or more on there and back. I've certainly had those sorts of commutes at times in my life when I was working. And you think, I've got 3 hours a day extra. And that's true. And you can maybe put some good use to that. Might be an opportunity to, as you talked about, slowing down and spending more time with God, and perhaps meditating and finding a quiet spot, and all of that. You can go on to christianmindfulness.co.uk and learn how to be mindful and all of those sorts of things to replace that time that you have on the tube. But also just be careful, because actually one of the secrets that many people don't realize, a lot of bosses think if they let people work from home, what are people going to do? They're going to sit around, watch Netflix and not do any work. Now, maybe there might be some people that do that, but if that's what they're really like, you don't want them working for you. But the truth is, people waste time in the office too. There are people who are looking at Facebook when they're supposed to be doing work in the office, or chatting too much to their work colleagues when they're supposed to be in the office. And actually, people who work from home often work harder than people in the office, because they don't have those moments where they're chatting, which actually I believe are important. They're part of that restorative nature. And they're also a part where ideas come up and You know, you can say, well, you know, asking for advice. So sometimes I think you do need to have those moments, as we were talking about, where you just connect with someone, not necessarily with a particular purpose in mind, but knowing that, you know, maybe something will come out of that conversation. But also you need to be careful, because what can happen is all that commute time you start working, or, you know, you know, especially if you've been working in bed, you know, it comes to 9 o'clock and you're like, oh, I wonder if the Americans have said something, if you're working with Americans, and you log on and look again, which I know is a temptation these days with the smartphones anyway. But I would certainly say, make sure you know when you're working and when you're not. And of course, if you've got kids, you might need to have some flexibility with that. You might need to say, right, I'm going to take a proper 1.5 hour lunch break, focus on the kids. And if we're allowed to, you know, get out of the house and walk, because I think that's another thing. Another tip I would say is watch out for exercise, because I became a blimp. I did no exercise at all for many months and years when I was at home, because, you know, at least if you're going to work, you have to walk to the train, or run to the train if you're late, or walk up and down the steps at the tube station or whatever. So, you know, and I think this is crucial. I mean, I know in China, they've been literally locking people up and, you know, not allowing them to leave the house. And there may come a time where at times we have to do that. But, you know, I would hope that, you know, if you live near a forest, for example, certainly at the moment, you can get in a car and drive to the forest and have a bit of a walk. If you make sure that you're at least, you know, six feet or more away from somebody. And outside, if you're, you know, if you're at least 6, 8, 10 feet away from somebody, I guess it's going to be quite hard to catch this virus. So I would say, you know, find some form of exercise. And there are actually, if you can't go to the gym, there are actually workout routines you can do at home. So things like the 7-minute exercise routine that doesn't need any equipment at all. It makes me sound like I'm a fitness freak. These days I'm not, because I have other reasons why I struggle to do some of those things. But I definitely would encourage you, especially if you're someone who currently does a lot of physical activity, to just stop. I mean, you actually lose your muscle really quickly. I mean, they've shown studies of that when people go to space and things like that, they come back and they're not able to walk. So be very careful about just lying in bed and working all day and not getting up and doing anything. Any other thoughts? Because I know you work from home, Richard.
Yes, I do. I mean, I think having a balanced approach is really important. So there'll be aspects of your work routine that you find particularly rewarding, those things that really get you inspired and motivated and you want to get after and work on. So somehow being, if possible, you know, spacing those out in between those activities that have to be done, but maybe don't sort of float your boat so much. So it just, you know, because you are a little bit more in control of your work, spacing it out in such a way that it keeps you moving, keeps you inspired, keeps you motivated. We really have to take responsibility in that respect, so that we're productive.
Yes, because I mean, even if you work for a big company, when you work from home, suddenly you're your own boss. You know, you haven't got anyone watching over you. You know, the shop steward or whatever, making sure, hey, work over there, stop talking, get on with it. You know, or saying, hey, this meeting needs to stop now, or, you know, whatever. And so I think we then need to be our own bosses. But I've noticed something about people who are their own bosses, and certainly for me when I've been my own boss at various points, is that we tend to be the worst boss we've ever experienced. We are so cruel to ourselves. You know, we think, you lazy person, whereas actually our own boss would say, no, it's all right, have a lunch break. You know, whereas we don't want to let ourselves have a lunch break. Oh, that's another thing. Make sure you eat, and eat well, because sometimes if you're working from home, it's easy to go from 9 o'clock till 5, not have a break, not eat anything, because there's no staff canteen. So you've actually got to get a bit organized and get some food in. Maybe that means going to the shop early in the morning when no one else is there, or late at night when no one else is there, or if you can get a slot of an internet order, get that done. But make sure you got food in the house, and good quality food, because that will help as well. Try not to take too much coffee and tea, because too much caffeine is bad for you, and things like that. And you certainly don't want to be drinking fizzy drinks all day and things like that, because it can be very, very unhealthy if you're not careful in that way. So thinking about your health, thinking about your well-being, thinking about how to do some recreation fun, even if it is just watching Netflix. There's nothing wrong with that occasionally, but not letting Netflix dominate. You've got to find other ways, as we were talking about earlier, about connecting. Maybe finding a hobby if you're able to do that. I know my wife, she loves spinning. So she has a busy day in the office. One of the ways she unwinds is spinning and making knitting stuff. And it's beautiful stuff that she makes. And it's, you know, it doesn't require her to be using her reasoning brain. And it actually, in a way, it's a form of mindfulness, I guess, because you're focused on that creative moment. Any other thoughts?
I think maybe there's a book that you haven't read that has been sitting on the shelf, and you know that the content is going to help you in a particular area of your life. And maybe now is the time to deliberately set aside time and space to focus on that particular book and pray and read through it with the Lord. And it could actually be a transformative process if we connect with God and seek to implement what we learn. And so it gives us the time and the space that we might not have had when we had to go to work. So take advantage of that, because you're actually making an investment in yourself and your own walk with God and your own capacity to move forward and grow as a person. So it's really important that we hit the pause button on the treadmill sometimes, step off and learn in a quieter, more solitary place. And we're actually equipping ourselves for life. It's an investment rather than opting out. It's that important.
Now that's brilliant, Richard. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. Oh yeah, I suppose actually it might be a good opportunity to get a board game out of an evening, you know, if you're all stuck in the house together, like the old days, you know, when it was cold and snowy and, you know, at Christmas time, some of those things that we do at Christmas, maybe playing charades or chess is one of the things I love. And actually you can play chess online, which is quite interesting. And you are actually playing other human beings. So chess.com, Scrabble, all of those things, you know, I mean, because sometimes, I mean, this is going to go on for a while. I think that's the other thing. One of my kids was actually getting quite excited about the idea that college will probably close at some point. And it probably will. But one of the reasons they haven't done it yet, or they haven't stopped churches meeting yet, although I think some churches in Scotland, I think, isn't it over 100 in Scotland already? And that may come in soon.
I think it's 500 at the moment.
Oh, 500. Okay, but it may be 100 at some point. You know, it depends on the country. And then, of course, at some point we might be told we're not allowed to go out at all, apart from to buy food, I guess. But then, well, I suppose what we're saying is that, you know, they said, oh, it's going to be great. But then they stopped and thought about it. They thought, yeah, it'd be great for the first 3 days. But then after a while, you can feel a bit, you know, stuck in. And that's where getting away mentally, if you can find a way, whether it's through meditation, mindfulness, or whether it's through just watching. I mean, one of the things, you know, it's interesting, I think we don't do enough of is watching nature programs. I mean, there's a reason why Richard Attenborough is so popular. And actually the proverb says, go to the ant, O sluggard, you know, consider his ways and be wise. So I think there's something, you know, you can watch a 2-hour documentary about elephants. I mean, there was one on Apple TV I watched recently called The Elephant Queen. And it was like, oh, wow. And there's something about, again, like you were saying, it's an opportunity to learn, actually, because there are things we can learn from these things, not just, oh, you know, the facts about elephants, but something about their interactions and how they are together and such like. And it makes you worship God because you think, what a wonderful creation we've made. So, you know, you might not be able to go and visit Africa right now and go on safari, but you can do that sitting in your lounge. And many of us have got great high definition TVs, and we can allow ourselves in that moment of being frustrated because we're stuck at home to let ourselves be sucked into that moment and maybe just slowly, or listening to a podcast. That's another thing. You can listen to a 1 hour, 2 hour podcast. And I mean, there's a few of our chats that we've had, haven't we? And actually that can be a good moment for someone, because we're so used to sort of little snippets, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. So sometimes it's actually quite good for us to just sit down, and it's a little bit less challenging, perhaps, a little bit less stimulating, perhaps. It might be a good way of unwinding before going to sleep, to listen to somebody waffling on for a while. And there are many, many great podcasts out there and sermons you can listen to. That's the other thing. If you can't go to church, you know, Spotify is great. You can get a list of your favorite songs that God uses to speak to you, and you can play those, but don't just play them in the background. Sit down and focus and worship God on your own or with your family, singing along to some of these tracks that you like, thinking about the words, trying to worship in the way that you would on a Sunday morning, rather than just seeing it as any old music playing in the background while I'm driving along. And listening to sermons and doing Bible study, all of those things. Sometimes I think all of that gets lost by the wayside, but we've got no excuse really, especially if we're the sort of person that has a 3-hour commute. Suddenly you've got 3 more hours a day that you can use in some profitable way, whether that's a new hobby, whether that's spending more time with God, listening to sermons, worshipping, learning how to meditate, christianmindfulness.co.uk, and all of those sorts of things. Anyway, is there anything else that you can think of as we come to a close, Rich, that we've missed?
No, I think as we close, perhaps I could just pray for those who are watching or listening to this podcast. Just that they would be enabled to make good choices over this coming period.
Yeah, go for it.
So, Father, I give you thanks for your presence with us, Lord, as we come before you now in prayer, and ask for each one watching or listening to this podcast, that you would enable each one to seek you during this time, to make good choices with how they use their time, especially for those who have had to self-isolate. We pray for each one that there would be good relationships, that loneliness, where possible, would be avoided, and that there'd be blessing of community and relationship, even during what many are describing as self-isolation. So we ask, Lord, for your blessing on your church, on your people, and that we would seek your face at this time and grow closer in our walk with you. And we ask these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you very much. My name's Adrian Warnock, adrianwarnock.com for more interviews. And I promise you, there's plenty of stuff you can fill your time with there to either read, watch, or listen to as you're trying to go to sleep at night. I'll send you to sleep if you like. And also christianmindfulness.co.uk, where you can learn how to meditate and learn a bit more about Rich's side. If you go onto my site, there's an interview I filmed with Rich a little while ago where we talk a lot about mindfulness, meditation, how that can help you manage perhaps the anxiety that many people are feeling. We've been talking very practically today about things you can do if you're working from home or self-isolating, but that would give you a little bit more sort of spiritual insight. There's also a sermon on adrianwarnock.com where R.T. Kendall was preaching to those going through the worst trial of their lives. And for some of us, this is going to be the worst trial of our lives. You might be thinking, oh, that's a bit of an overstatement. But it will be. And so that might be something you might want to watch, listen to, or read to prepare yourself on the assumption that this could get quite hard. So enjoy any more free time that you get if you are asked to work from home. Have some fun with it if you can. Don't beat yourself up. Let yourself relax a bit, but also take it as an opportunity, as we've spoken today, to pursue God and maybe learn a new skill. So all the best, everybody. And if you can think of any other tips for people working from home or self-isolating, obviously there are all sorts of practical things about needing to get food delivered and ways in which we can help each other as neighbours, then it would be great for you to share in the comments box and to below. So thank you very much, everybody, and thank you, Rich.
No problem. God bless.